Coming up on this Monday edition of Daybreak, President Park Geun-hye will apologize to the nation today for the sinking of the Sewol-ho ferry and the government's botched response to the disaster. In a rare public disclosure about anything that could be construed as negative, North Korea says sorry for the fatal collapse of an apartment building in Pyongyang. Plus, 3 of Korea's leading credit card companies are cleared to resume business. They have been slapped with 3-month business suspensions for their role in the country's largest ever data leak earlier this year. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Monday, May 19th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, President Park Geun-hye will address the nation on this Monday to apologize for the government's failure to prevent the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. Presidential office spokesperson Min Kyung-wook says the president will make the televised statement at 9 a.m. Korea time, just under 3 hours from now. She will also announce measures to bolster national safety and root out irregularities in public service. On Sunday, President Park attended a mass for the victims and families of the ferry accident at Myeongdong Cathedral in Seoul. After her address on this Monday, President Park will embark on a 2-day visit to the UAE for a ceremony marking an installation of the first Korean-made nuclear reactor in the country. Turning to the criminal probe into what caused the sinking, and the head of the shadowy family network that owned the Sewol-ho ferry is the focus of the investigation now. Yoo Byungeon is presumed to be hiding inside a compound run by his religious cult, but no one really knows for sure. Officials may have a new lead, however, after comments made by one of Yoo's close business associates. Connie Kim has this report.
The chairman of an affiliate of Sewol Group, which controls Cheongjin Marine Company, seemed to confirm that the practical owner of the Sewol-ho ferry is hiding at the headquarters of a religious sect his family leads in Kumsuwon, Gyeonggi-do Province, south of Seoul, but then he changed his mind. Hematocentric Life chairman Lee Jae-ok said in a press briefing inside the compound on Sunday that Yoo might come outside if his name were called.
Yoo has taken pictures from that window over the past 4 years. He might come outside if I shouted his name.
But as the press continued to ask about Yoo's whereabouts, Lee reversed himself, saying he doesn't know where Yoo is.
The last time I saw him was about a week after the Sewol-ho ferry accident.
The briefing was held in a yard inside the compound where Yoo has taken photos. The religious sect opened some of the facilities to the press on Sunday and asked that everything happening inside be made public. Now, Yoo is believed to be in hiding after he failed to appear for questioning last Friday. Recent reports that Yoo was trying to escape the compound in the car of a believer have prompted police to strengthen its surveillance of cars coming in and out of the facility. The 73-year-old is suspected of tax evasion and embezzlement of millions of dollars from company affiliates owned by him and members of his family. Yoo has until Tuesday to show up for a court hearing. Now, if he fails to appear, prosecutors are likely to issue an arrest warrant for Yoo on Thursday. Arrest warrants for Yoo's second son and eldest daughter, both of whom are abroad, have been issued after the two failed to appear for questioning. More than a month after the Sewol-ho ferry sunk off the southwestern coast of Korea, another body was pulled from the waters Sunday morning, raising the death toll from the disaster to 286. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Lawmakers at the National Assembly will begin a 1-month extraordinary session on this Monday to address the Sewol-ho ferry accident. And with local elections coming up in less than 3 weeks' time, political watchers say they expect clashes between the nation's 2 main parties. The ruling Saenuri Party is expected to focus on the fundamental cause of the accident, while the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy is likely to focus on the government's response to the disaster. Last Friday, after a meeting with the families of the victims, President Park Geun-hye stressed the need to create a new law related to the ferry accident and the installation of a special prosecutor. Both topics will be discussed by the lawmakers. Now, in the rest of the day's news, in a very rare move, North Korea's state media has reported on a serious accident at an apartment construction site in Pyongyang. The report, broadcast on Sunday, said high-level officials were sorry for putting the lives of the people at risk. Our Hwang Sang-hee reports.
North Korea called it an unimaginable accident after an unfinished 23-story apartment building collapsed in Pyongyang, reportedly injuring hundreds of people. The state-run Korean Central News Agency reported Sunday the collapse occurred last Tuesday due to the result of irresponsible supervision. The report did not provide a death toll, but said a search and rescue operation had been carried out to find survivors and treat the injured. Leader Kim Jong-un reportedly sat up all night in pain after being told about the accident. He instructed leading officials of the party, state, and the army to rush to the scene and command the rescue operation. The agency published lengthy apologies from senior officials, including Minister of People's Security Choi Bu-il, who apologized for putting lives and property at risk. A South Korean official who wished to remain anonymous said, although the 23-story apartment building was still under construction, 92 families were already living there. He said it's common in the north for people to move in before construction officially ends, and said the final death toll was likely to be considerable. It's extremely rare for North Korea's state media to report on an accident such as this, and for high-ranking officials to issue an apology. Experts say the report was likely meant to show Young Kim as a leader who cares about the people, and to prove the North Korean government better than the South by drawing a comparison between the building collapse and the sinking of the Sewol-ho ferry. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
The United States has proposed establishing a joint missile defense system with South Korea and Japan to ensure a rapid response to any further North Korean provocations. The Yomiuri Shimbun reported Sunday that U.S. National Security Advisor Susan Rice mentioned the idea to Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe during President Barack Obama's visit to Japan in April. Abe reportedly agreed to encourage Seoul to share its radar information on North Korea's missile activities. The Daily said the South's proximity to North Korea and Japan's advanced missile defense system could potentially work together to respond to threats from Pyongyang. The Daily pointed out, however, that the poor diplomatic ties between Seoul and Tokyo is the main stumbling block to this plan. Now, former Japanese Prime Minister Tomoichi Murayama has criticized current Prime Minister Shinzo Abe for seeking to change the constitution so Japan can exercise its right to collective self-defense. In an interview with Japanese daily Asahi Shimbun on Sunday, Murayama said it was deceptive for the government to say it cannot protect its own citizens if it doesn't lift the ban on collective self-defense. The former Prime Minister added Abe has no right to change the interpretation of the Constitution, saying the document would have no meaning if it were to change with each and every new administration. As Prime Minister, Murayama issued an apology for Japan's colonization of Korea and its wartime atrocities.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Three of the nation's leading credit card firms are fully back to work as a 3-month business suspension slapped on them for their involvement in the biggest personal data leak in Korean history has come to an end. However, financial authorities will keep a close eye on them and stand ready with more sanctions if they step out of line again. Kim Min-ji reports.
Credit card companies KB Gungmin Card, Lotte Card, and NH Nongyup Card have resumed operations after a 3-month business suspension following the leak of personal data of some 140 million customers. Starting with online services, the card companies are now able to issue new credit cards, extend loans, and provide cash advances. The firms will also promote a series of new card products with ample benefits to attract new customers and make up for the loss incurred during the suspension period. The ban is believed to have cost the companies tens of millions of dollars and millions of customers. The country's biggest ever data leak was caused by an employee from a credit ratings agency stealing personal information, including identification numbers and bank account numbers, and selling it to an advertising company. Meanwhile, financial authorities are planning to offer greater incentives for reporting of illegal practices of card firms when issuing new credit cards. The Financial Supervisory Service said those who report of illegal methods to entice customers, such as issuing credit cards on the streets or offering giveaways that exceed 10% of the annual membership fee, will be able to receive roughly $490 in incentives, 5 times more than the original amount. The reporting period will also be extended to 60 days from the current 20 and can be done through the Credit Finance Association, the Financial Supervisory Service, or individual card companies. The financial authorities say they will inspect the credit card companies during the second half of the year, and if they conduct wrongdoings or irregularities, they will be subject to heftier punishment. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The nation's leading economic think tank has warned that the strong Korean won could ultimately hurt Korea's economic growth. The Korea Economic Research Institute says the nation's economic growth rate will drop to 3.3% by the end of the year from an earlier forecast of 3.5%, once the local currency begins changing hands for 1,000 won to the greenback. The institute predicts the won will continue to increase in strength through the end of the year, reducing the prices of imported raw materials and consumer goods in local markets, boosting private consumption and increasing capital investments. Now, doctors treating Samsung chairman Lee Kyung-hye say the 72-year-old is on the mend after his heart attack. Officials at the Samsung Medical Center in southern Seoul said Sunday that he is gradually getting better, and doctors are considering transferring him to a general ward, dispelling rumours that it's still touch and go whether he will make a full recovery. Samsung is also reportedly considering legal options against those spreading such rumours. The 72-year-old, who helped build Samsung Electronics into one of the world's biggest tech firms, has a history of health issues. This latest health scare, however, is expected to speed up the transfer of executive control to his only son, Lee Jae-yong. Now, US lawmakers called for action against Korean steelmakers for selling products in the United States for less than their market value. 56 members of the US Senate denounced a preliminary ruling made by the US Commerce Department in February that imposed anti-dumping duties on imports from 8 countries, but excluded steel pipes and tubes made in Korea. They called for the Commerce Department to review Korea's case out of concern of the economic impact it is having on struggling US steelmakers. A final determination may be made in July, with the US International Trade Commission making a final decision by August 21st. Now, as more people in Korea adopt more Western eating habits and just have more money to spend, the waistlines of the population is generally and slowly expanding. There's no groundbreaking solution to obesity other than eating right and exercising regularly, but a group of local scientists has uncovered a medical reason for obesity that could change the way that doctors treat the condition. Our Son Jung-in reports.
Obesity, which greatly raises the risk of other health problems, affects over 21% of the world population. Overeating and a lack of exercise are the main causes, but local researchers say they've uncovered another factor. A joint group of experts from Asan Medical Center and Gachon University of Medicine and Science discovered that psyllium, a hair-like structure on brain nerve cells, holds the key to treating obesity. They found that cilia, which act as antennae for the cells, fail to perceive the messages the body sends when their lengths are reduced. So when the stomach is full, the brain does not receive the message to stop eating. When neuronal cilia lengths were selectively reduced, the food intake of a mouse surged by 30%, while its energy consumption fell by more than 20%. This phenomenon of inverse proportion between cilia length and obesity was seen in every mouse tested. Cilia in normal mice measured an average of 5.5 micrometers long, while those in obese mice measured 3.3 micrometers. The team also discovered that once obesity began to set in, cilia became subsequently short. Therefore, experts anticipate they could find a medical treatment to curing obesity once they find a way to grow the length of cilia.
We can now focus on ways to develop a medication that helps cilia and nerve cells maintain their length. We hope this will eventually help prevent and cure obesity.
The findings were featured in the world-renowned scientific journals, the Journal of Clinical Investigation, and in Nature Reviews. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following this morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim at the News Center. Very good morning to you, Eunice.
Good morning to you, Mark. The recovery operations in Turkey's worst ever mining accident have wrapped, and with it, the probe into who was responsible for the disaster heats up. The last bodies were pulled out Saturday afternoon, putting the final death toll at 301 people. Relatedly, Turkish police have arrested 25 people in connection to the Soma coal mine disaster, according to Turkey's Dogan news agency. Among them were the mine's general manager and the operations manager. The owner of the mine, Soma Holdings, has maintained that the collapse was not caused by negligence, but rather an unexplained buildup of heat. Demonstrations continued into the weekend as hundreds of people occupied the capital of Ankara, Istanbul, and Izmir. Local authorities have banned protests in Soma. Islamic rebel forces in Syria say the country's air defense chief was killed during combat operations in an area east of Damascus, a development also confirmed by Britain-based Monitor, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. They say General Hussein Ishaq died from wounds incurred during an offensive by President Bashar al-Assad's forces aimed at taking more of the capital region ahead of a presidential election on June 3rd. Ishaq is one of the few top-ranking officers to die in Syria's three-year civil war. The Balkan Peninsula is being swept by the worst flooding the region has seen since records were kept 120 years ago, triggering an evacuation of more than 16,000 people and taking dozens of lives. 3 months' worth of rain fell in 3 days, triggering more than 3,000 landslides Sunday and threatening power plants in Serbia. Help has come from EU nations in the form of rescue teams and humanitarian aid. Russia sent 2 cargo planes filled with food generators and rescue boats to help deal with the torrential rain's aftermath. And the first suspected person-to-person transmission of the Middle East respiratory virus has been recorded in the United States. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said a man from Illinois likely picked up the infection from an Indiana man during a business meeting earlier this month, though he did not show the symptoms of the virus and was reportedly feeling fine. The Indiana man, however, was hospitalized shortly after traveling from Saudi Arabia, where he works as a healthcare worker. The U.S. Health Institute says the case does not change the risk to the general public, which remains at low.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off in badminton, where Myeongdong and Kim Ki-jung wins their first competition after being reinstated from their suspension, and they're off to a great start. With Yongdae pairing up with Yoo Byungeon and facing off against a German pair, they take the match in 3 sets, 21-11, 8-21, and 21-19 to take the match 2 sets to 1. The victory is the first since coming back from his suspension, as the men's team will face off with the host nation India, and the women's team will face off against Australia in the second match of the group stages next. And now moving over to the annual Korea-Japan University Basketball Competition, as Korea continue their dominance over Japan with a 3-straight win over their opponents. With their final game taking place at the Korea University Hwajang Gymnasium, Korea beats Japan 82-71, led by Lee Jong-hyun as he scores 14 points and 6 rebounds in just the second quarter alone. With the win, Korea improves their record at 83 wins and 27 losses against Japan in the 37 times that they've held this competition. And now with that, moving over to the 2014 Women's Asian Cup, where Korea continued their dominance in Group B with a 4-0 win over Thailand. Now, Korea, of course, led by Seoul City Hall's Park Geun-hye, who scored a hat-trick in the match. Now, Korea continues their scoring ways after beating Myanmar 12-0 in the first match of the group stages. And now, of course, staying in football, but over to Sunday's K-League Classic action. We had one match take place with FC Seoul taking on Seongnam FC, so let's take a look at the highlights. Of course, going into the match here, a rather quiet first half of the match as both sides failed to score as they head into the second half scoreless 0-0. But the second half, both sides get a bit more aggressive, especially FC Seoul continues to fire away. But the 85th minute, Park Ki-sung with a brilliant overhead kick finds the back of the net. Holy cow, a brilliant goal. And that's the final score there as FC Seoul pulls away with a 1-0 win over Seongnam FC. And now moving over to some Sunday's KBO action as the Doosan Bears end their 7-game winning streak, losing to the NC Dinos 9-4, with the Samsung Lions beating the Kia Tigers 8-2, and the Lotte Giants, thanks to Hwang Jae-gyun's grand slam, beat the Nexen Heroes 11-6. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Hanwha Eagles looking to win their series against the SK Wyverns. Of course, going into the game here, first inning, man on second, Luke Scott singles to right, and RBI single gives the SK Wyverns the 1-0 lead. Bottom of the inning, Chang Moon-ho doubles to left center. Lee Young-gyu scores all the way from first, and we're tied 1-1. Not done yet. Kim Tae-gyun this time singles to left field, and the Hanwha Eagles have the lead 2-1. Fifth inning, Hong Myung-chun singles to center here, and we're tied 2-2. Sixth inning, bases loaded for Lee Dae-soo, and he capitalizes on the intentional walk from the previous batter with a 2-run single. And the Hanwha Eagles have the lead 4-2. And despite SK with 12 base hits on the game, they never come back as the Hanwha Eagles take the series with a 5-2 victory. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning, I'm Lee Ji-hyun with the latest weather updates. Well, it surely feels like summer is already here. Temperatures rose to upper 20s to low 30s in the most parts of the peninsula over the weekend. And it seems like today should be another hot day. And here in Seoul, highs will be reaching a scorching 27 degrees Celsius. Also, the whole nation can expect to see much more sun than clouds today, so we can look forward to have mostly to partly sunny day today. So it could feel a bit hotter than actual temperatures in the afternoon. And over in Jindo, winds and waves should continue to remain calm, but the currents in the water will get weaker as the spring tide period ended yesterday. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The morning low here in Seoul is starting out at 14 and the high will rise to 27, while Daegu will peak at 31 and Gwangju and Busan should climb to 29 and 25 respectively. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like down on Jeju and Daejeon will reach 24 and 29 later in the day. Dokdo should see a high of 21, while Mount Keungang tops out at 14. Well, that's all for now. Enjoy your morning commute, and I'll be back with more updates after 10.
Well, thank you very much for the weather there, Jion. And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Korea Today is coming up at 7 a.m. Korea time, and we'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.